Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day-to-day lives. Let's start with the video. I am 28 years old and I haven't seen or spoken to my sister for the past 8 years because she refused to meet with me. Every time I have invited her over, called her, or texted her, she has ignored my messages and invitations. As a matter of fact, she has ignored me as a whole. I stopped trying after she ignored me for the first 3 years. This whole ignoring me bit became prevalent after she moved out to LA because of a job opportunity she got. It was like the moment I was out of sight, I was also out of mind for her. She got married and I was not invited. I heard about the wedding and the stories from my parents, and when I dropped by for Christmas dinner, which she refused to attend because I was coming over. Now, you might be thinking that because she's going so above and beyond to avoid me, it must be because of something severe that I have done, right? Well, the truth is far from that. When I was 20 years old and my sister was 24, while she was leaving for LA, I was staying back with my parents, helping them with the business that we had. We run a family business, and during that time, it was a bit of a difficult year. Because I was choosing to stay back and stay poor, according to her words, my sister decided to not hang out with me anymore. I eventually got enrolled in a skills class and a business management class just to help my parents better, and by the time I was done with my classes, my parents had recovered from the trouble that they were facing in the business. So I was off doing my own thing. But as I was a broke college student from a hillbilly town, her words, she was embarrassed to be seen with me and did not want anything to do with me, which led to this 8 years of the Cold War, where she went out of her way to avoid me. The reason I'm making this post today is that I find it ironic how the turntables have turned. You see, my sister recently got a divorce. The wedding that I was not invited to? Yeah, well, that one did not last long enough, and that is because my ex-brother-in-law figured out that my sister is a gold digger. What a shocker, right? Well, not really. If you had the opportunity to see her social media, you would see that she is all about that money and designer brands. Anything that would gain the tiniest amount of popularity, she would want to have it immediately. This habit of hers has been a constant since she was 16, and I remember it vividly. So her gold-digging accusation may have been a surprise to my whole family, but it is not a surprise to me. But since then, she has gotten a divorce and has made her return to her hometown. Once she returned, we met over a family dinner just a few days ago, and she was way too sweet with me. Actually, sweet would not be the right word. The right word would be buttering. She was buttering me up well. She was pretending like she hadn't ignored me for 8 years because she thought I was poor. She was all smiling and happy and touchy with me, like she had not said the meanest things she could have said to our parents about me when she did not know I was around. The coldness I presented was very obvious to anyone around us, which resulted in Mom chastising me and telling me to behave and to be nice to my sister because her husband has kicked her out based on false accusations and she could use my support. Dad isn't a man of many words, but he too nodded along with Mom and told me that I should stick by the family. I could not tolerate the hypocrisy because when my sister dearest decided to ignore my existence and call me dirt cheap, hillbilly, poor, and other things along those lines, these two people simply tolerated those words and told me to be the bigger person because obviously my sister did not mean it. It was astounding seeing them tell me to be by my family when the same family did not choose to be with me while one of the members was ostracizing me. So I said it. I said I have no intention of being nice to someone who had been ignoring me for the past 8 years because I am poor and cheap. My sister rolled her eyes at me and told me that she was just saying what was true because when I was younger, I was a poor and hillbilly-looking person in comparison to her. I laughed and said that if I am a redneck, then so is she, because deep under those Gucci and Prada that she is carrying on her, she is just as redneck as I am. She looked offended, and I still can't stop laughing whenever I remember her fuming face. My mom jumped to her defense, telling me that what I am saying is absolutely out of line and not necessary, because why must I call her that? I should be respectful to her emotional needs. I told Mom that she is being disrespectful to not just me, but to the whole family, because while we are farmers and have agro-based business, that does not make us hillbillies or rednecks. And she cannot pretend that she is better than us just because she went to LA and got herself a nice tan and luxury clothes. That shut Mom up real quick. Dad told me off, saying that he will not tolerate me disrespecting his daughter under his roof, which made me even madder because I am his daughter too, and she disrespected me first for 8 years, and nobody bothered telling her off because she is the favorite, and they are taking her side. Dad defended himself, saying that he is not taking any sides and is just stating how things are, and I told him that by stating things as they are in his opinion, he has already made it obvious whose side he is taking. That led to another chaotic screaming match where my mom called me a mean and ungrateful child. Dad told me to leave the house and never returned. My sister told me that I will never be as classy and as nice as her, and I am just jealous that while she gets to look pretty and be pretty, I am stuck being this ugly girl. I listened to everything that they said, and I told them off individually, reminding both of my parents that I chose to not follow my dreams when I could just help them out at the farm, while my sister dearest up and left. I told my sister how I never want to be as pretty and nice as her, because at least I work hard for whatever I have and do not capture a man with false promises and push him to bankruptcy just to feed my obsession with brands like her. Once giving them a piece of my mind, I decided to leave. I have always tried to put my family over me because I wanted to keep the family together, but that dinner made me realize that the whole thing is a farce, and they were just seeing me as a doormat because I am simply convenient. So now all is said and done, I feel completely free because I have no intention of speaking with them ever again, despite all of the threats that my parents are leaving me, saying how they would cut me off and they have disowned me. They cannot disown me if I have disowned them first. Thank you so much for all the validation and kind words you have left in the comments and the DMs. I appreciate it. A few things I wanted to clear out for everyone. My sister never called me those things to my face. See, my parents are in their 50s and 60s, so they are not very tech savvy. Whenever I came over during the weekend, I would help them out with whatever tech stuff they were facing an issue with. My mom somehow ended up with every call being recorded and stored as a voice recording in her phone, which was eating up a lot of storage. She made me go through each recording meticulously before deleting them, and that's when I heard my sister call me all of those things. That is when I decided to stop trying to reach out to her. During the call, my mother did not reprimand my sister for calling me those things, so it was clear that she did not care. My dad was also a part of that call, so it is clear he did not stand up for me either. I feel like I should be disappointed, but at the same time, I'm not. Despite knowing everything, I still chose to take care of my parents because I care about my family and I wanted to take care of them to the best of my abilities. But I am not going to get taken advantage of like this. I learned about all of those things regarding my sister's divorce because my mom heard about the news and called me to complain. Being all shocked that she was getting called a gold digger, which again was not a surprise, as she has been spoilt rotten since she was 13. The financial crisis in the business that led to me putting my career on hold for 2 years was not because of my sister leaving for LA. My dad made a few mistakes, so that isn't her fault. I am financially stable, and I have a feeling that the reason my sister was being so sweet and nice to me was that she wanted to shift to my apartment because, as far as I know, Gucci and the farm do not go hand in hand. But I have no intention of allowing her in my apartment because I'm not helping someone who has been ignoring me for the past 8 years, as I have said. It has been about a week since that dinner, and the messages and calls they had been leaving me have lowered in number. But I doubt that they have realized that I am planning on going with no contact. But let's see. Welp, it happened, guys. The thing I was suspecting. So my mother called me and she was acting like the fight did not happen and everything was fine. After she was done with the casual pleasantries, she told me that she wants me to clean out my bedroom because my sister needs a place to stay, and my apartment would be more comfortable for her than the farm. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment where I use the smaller bedroom space as my study, office work, as I am working with a company now. I will not be able to help her out with some space, and even if I could, I would never help her out. I told my mom that I am not doing it because I need the space, and I could hear my sister start screaming. She snatched the phone from my mom's hand and started calling me selfish and that she was not giving me an option. I told her that if she showed up at my apartment, I will let my landlord know that she is not welcome. And if the landlord calls the cops on her, that will not be my issue. That led to another chaotic screaming match, which I did not bother staying for. I hung up the moment Mom started screeching at me, and I blocked her and her sister's number. I doubt my dad will reach out to me, but if he does, I will block him as well because I am sure his daughter can take care of everything that I was helping them out with. So, oh well. My dad called me telling me how disappointed he is in me, and I informed him that I am disappointed in them, and I do not plan on speaking with them until they decide to apologize and treat me the same way they treat my sister. Dad refused to admit that they are softer on my sister, so I hung up on him and blocked his number. I informed the landlord that there may be people who might try to get in my apartment when I'm not around and asked him to not allow them in. My landlord was understanding, and I felt much more at peace. And what do you know? 2 days later, my landlord called me while I was at work, informing me that my sister was trying to get the keys from him, claiming that I told her to get into my house to get some stuff, which led to my landlord threatening her with the cops to get her to leave. I am sure if I had not blocked my parents, I would receive a bunch of offended and hateful calls telling me that I'm selfish for denying access to my apartment. But oh well. You are NTA by miles. I would do the same if I were in your place. You are right in feeling the way you do and doing what you are doing. Your parents chose sides the moments they did not stand up for you, while your sister called you all of those things. Some parents do not deserve to be parents. I have a daughter, Eleanor, 6, and my stepsister, Jess, has a daughter, Hattie, 5. Me, my husband, Jess, and her husband, Paul, are all staying at our parents' house over the Christmas period. For context, Paul arrived a day after the rest of us, very late at night because he does shift work and worked late before driving to our parents. The next morning, the girls were playing in Eleanor's room at about 10 a.m. The adults were all downstairs except Paul because he was sleeping, and my stepdad was out. Suddenly, we heard Paul shouting. This is not too unusual, if unpleasant, but this episode sounded particularly bad, so we got up. Before we could even get to the stairs, my daughter runs down crying, saying Paul had shouted at her for waking him up. My husband was livid and went upstairs to deal with Paul while I calmed my daughter down. I knew it would be absolutely impossible for us to be around Paul after what happened, so we would probably be leaving. Jess said that was ridiculous. Paul probably got annoyed and was tired and he'd apologize and everything would be fine. I said no, it would not be fine. Nobody shouts at my child and remains on speaking terms with me or around my daughter. Paul should know better than to be acting like that with other people's children. When my stepdad came back, we told him what happened and that we would be leaving because we refused to subject Eleanor to being around Paul after what he did, and we don't trust him not to overstep his boundaries like that again. My stepdad agreed, but said that it was unfair we should have to leave after Paul was the problem. He called Paul and Jess down and said they had to go. Weren't welcome on Christmas or until after we had gone home. Paul tried to defend himself, saying the kids should have been quieter, but when my husband got annoyed, Paul half-heartedly apologized. I didn't believe a word of his apology. My stepdad reiterated that Jess was welcome to stay without Paul, but Paul had to be gone within the hour. Jess started crying and said it was unfair and that my stepdad was choosing me over her and was a horrible father. Expletive rant. So I left the room with Eleanor, and the next I saw was her and Paul going upstairs to pack. They left without a goodbye. Since they've been gone every few hours, I've got a text from Jess saying how I've ruined her Christmas and her relationship with her dad over 30 seconds of bad judgment. I don't think I created this situation because it was my stepdad's decision to throw them out. I offered to leave. I also think Paul made this bed that Jess is lying in. All he had to do was come downstairs and ask us to quiet the children or pop his head into the room and ask politely. Nevertheless, I do feel bad that Jess is stuck in the middle and that Hattie won't see her grandparents on Christmas because of this. Did I overreact? Would Paul apologizing have been enough? Ari, the kids being unsupervised. I was upstairs with them and we were all going down to do some baking. The girls asked for 10 more minutes to continue playing before coming down, so I went down to get all the stuff ready in the kitchen. They weren't on their own for hours on end. They were playing with a large dollhouse in Eleanor's room, hence why they were not playing downstairs to start with. I don't think this will change the responses, but someone said this needed to be in the main post R.E. Paul's history of yelling. Paul yells at his daughter Hattie quite a lot, in a way I would describe as quite vicious. We have all been made uncomfortable by Paul's outbursts, and more than once I've had to bite my tongue because I just think his conduct is unacceptable. But I do because he and Jess are the parents. Maybe I did overreact, but imagining him shouting at my daughter the way I've seen him shout at his made me sick and angry. NTA. A 5-year-old and a 6-year-old are going to make noise playing together. It was 10 a.m., not 1 a.m., so I failed to see why anyone should have gotten angry about it. I'm stuck on the part where you say Paul shouting is unpleasant but not unusual. That's an issue. If your brother-in-law is shouting at his kid enough for it to be a normal thing, there's something wrong there. She's 5. Her dad shouting at her shouldn't be the norm. Good for you for standing up for your kid and your family. Paul has absolutely no business shouting at your daughter for playing. She's 6. Honestly, I'd say that, short of causing bodily harm to his daughter, he should never be yelling at someone else's kid. You didn't demand they get kicked out. You told your family that as a result of your brother-in-law's inappropriate behavior, you would leave, so your daughter wasn't subjected to it anymore. Your stepdad obviously agrees that Paul was out of line, otherwise he wouldn't have asked you to stay and Paul to leave. I have a feeling this shouting thing happens often, otherwise I don't see why your stepdad would have asked Paul to leave. Literally, WTF are these comments? No, NTA in any way, shape, or form, but he works night shift. Cool story, bro. Lots of people manage to work night shift without screaming at their own children and other people's children in somebody else's home. Anyone calling you an AH is a big OL-AH themselves. Anyone calling you an AH is a big old AH themselves. Having a justifiable reason to be frustrated doesn't mean screaming at children is suddenly something everyone uncomfortably turns a blind eye to. Working night shift doesn't actually mean several family units have to walk on eggshells to avoid your predictable wrath. Your bill can grow the frick up, Or his whole family can get used to being excluded for his poor behavior. Such is life. You are going to remove your family from an uncomfortable and inappropriate situation, which the hosts understood, but insisted on throwing out the problematic person instead. NTA, NTA, NTA. NTA, shouting at kids is abusive and not okay. You are not responsible for how your stepdad handled it. No one ruined anyone's Christmas. Even the Grinch learned that other people's Christmas experiences were not his to control. In future, it might help to ensure that Paul and Jess understand what kind of behaviors are acceptable and not acceptable, and to give them a chance if they genuinely seem to understand and commit to acceptable behavior. Sorry to hear you and your family had an unhealthy surprise. Disappointment, guilt, and confusion at your